in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogdon.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio, the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogdon. Often we get so caught up and consumed with trying to be a success in our business that we never even get to live the life that we want. And so a lot of people are taking a step back, even though they've been successful in business. They weren't successful in the sense of being able to live the life that they wanted to live. And so they took a step back and they reevaluated their life and their business and began to do business and create the life of their dreams based on their goals and their view and their philosophy of life. And so there are people who have done this, and there are people who teach how to do this and help coach and guide us to really make the most of both our business as well as our life. And one of those masters of both is with me today. I'll be speaking with Gary Mahler. He is a Zen beach boy, a master of flow, speaker of truth, known for pure spirit connection, choosing only the best waves, strength in silence, and commitment to vision and purpose. Gary ran Mahler Industries, a highly regarded CNC manufacturing facility in British Columbia for more than 20 years before he became alive as a professional coach. So Gary, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Wow, thank you. What an introduction. I really appreciate that. It's great to hear everything that you have said, and just wonderful to hear what you said about me. Thank you.
I'm really interested in learning more about your journey. A lot of people will begin to build the business they think is going to give them happiness or give them financial security. And maybe it does for a time, but eventually you reach a point where you don't feel like that your life is really making sense, even though the business is actually doing very well. And that's why the tagline of our show is building the business you need so you can live the life you want. And if you're not able to live the life that you want, then your business becomes a prison. You experienced this and you worked through it. So tell us a little bit more about your journey and what you went through to get to where you are now.
Beautiful. Yeah, my journey in business starts when I was just a senior in high school, unsure of what I wanted to do with my life. At that time, my dad was and is a master machinist, and he had been unemployed. It was the recession of 82, 83, and he wanted to start a business, and I had saved some money for university, so we pooled our money and created a machine shop. Machining, I had been around machining all my life because my dad owned a company when we lived back east, which he sold to move out west of Vancouver. It wasn't something that I really was enthused about, but man, it was an easy way to make money in the summer. So I could go to school, without really incurring debt, with being able to just focus on my studies and enjoying life. So that's what I did. And I figured, this is a great way to do this. So I worked really hard in that business during the summers. And then I focused on my studies, and every summer I had a job. I thought this was ingenious. And then I decided to study business. I took a 5-year program. I did a thesis on our machine shop about what the future held in that industry. And basically, I worked my way through university, and at that point, I owned a part of it. And I said, you know what? In 2 years, I'm moving to Paris, and sayonara. Bye. So that happened. I worked in the company for 2 years, helped grow it, found someone to replace my place in the company. moved to Paris. I stayed there for 2 years. I loved it. I became alive. I was flourishing. Then my mom got a hold of the thesis. And in the thesis, it had this idea of getting into something called CNC machining, which is computer numerical controlled machining, kind of like robotics, very high tech and very expensive. So she's like, we decided to go ahead with that. Will you come back? And I'm like, no. So she kept on calling for 1 month every day to Paris. I decided that
it's your mom, right? I mean, what are you going to do?
It's my mom. I'm not going to not pick up. It's my mom. So it's like, yeah. So anyways, it's like, yeah, I'll come back for 6 months. 6 months became 16 years. I gave up the dream of living in Paris, the dream of artistic endeavors. And I did what was expedient. I did what was easy. I kind of went back into my shell, built the company. It's not what I loved, but it came natural and it was easy and it was safe. You know, my mom had joined the business at that point. My dad was in it. I was in it. It was fun to work together, but it's not what I really loved. And I took it very, very serious. And my role as vice president, and I took especially the operation side, I took everything on. Every concern of my clients, of my customers, quality control, helped build our company into an ISO certified and registered company. I was like a robot on 24 hours a day. And I was married to my first wife at the time, and I was just going more distant with her, more dead inside, more angry, more just numb. So that's kind of, that got me to the place that you speak of, where I was building this business. That wasn't my first choice, but it was expedient. And I did it, and I had been doing it so long, like, no one's going to hire me. How am I going to leave this?
So you created kind of a golden cage for yourself.
Yes, you nailed it. It was exactly that. A golden cage that the door was actually wide open, but I thought it was shut.
So what was the turning point that got you interested in coaching? You have studied, trained, and been certified in a variety of different coaching institutes and courses.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst that made you wake up one day and say, "Oh, I've got to do this instead"?
Man, so between the 2 points that you speak of, the first point where something happened was year 2000, and I only started training in 2011. So we're talking 11 years between there. And at 2000, I had no idea what coaching was. And even in 2010, I had heard of coaching, and I thought it was ridiculous. There's no way I would become a coach. So what happened in between there, in 2000, I went to Japan, and I went to a place called Nara, Japan. And there's this place called Todaiji. It's the world's largest wooden temple. And I walk in, and I know there's a Buddha there, but I don't really know anything about Buddhas. But as soon as I walk in, I see this most beautiful visage, this face of peace. And I was like, I want that. I'm tired of being a nervous wreck. Those words, I want that, began a slow unwinding of all my pressures and stress to desire peace. And from there, I slowly unwound that life. And what happened was a series of things. I slowly moved away from what I was doing. I ended a marriage. I started to do other things, learned meditation, and I became enamored with Japan. So much like when I was younger, I wanted to live in Paris. I wanted to live in Japan. So I made a choice back in 2006, 2007, that that's something that I wanted. And I created that. I found someone to replace me in my company. I worked remotely, moved to Tokyo, and created a small gig where I was consulting. I called myself an English coordinator. And what I did was I helped cool people do cool stuff in English. And I would just go out and be me. And it was like great. So I'm running my company, my part of the company, directing who I hired to replace me. And I was free. So I was going to parties in Roppongi, hanging out in Shinjuku and Shibuya. I met the vice president of Banana Republic at the time. And we started talking, and he asked what I did, and I asked what he was doing, and he had some help that he needed with. And what I did was I just said, hey, why don't we hang out? I'll help you with what you're doing. And I helped him do cool stuff in English. And then from there, he introduced me to other people. And since I was doing a bunch of internal work, I was coaching without knowing it. I was consulting, but I was also helping him with his life.
That's probably the best kind of coaching there is, when you're actually doing it without realizing it.
Yeah. That's what I did. And then my best friend says, I think you're a life coach. And I said, no, definitely not. I don't believe in that. And he goes, well, label it whatever you do, but you're coaching. And then he remembered that I had told him a story that I loved when Vancouver had a basketball team. I loved when Chicago Bulls came. And then Phil Jackson would be just this guy, the Zen guy that no matter what happened around him. And I remember I loved that guy, and I really followed him. And he goes, you're just like Phil Jackson, but instead of coaching basketball, you're coaching life, business, relationships, leadership. Bingo. From that moment, I was like, yep, I'm going to find the best schools. I'm going to be the best coach that I can be for this world. And that around 2011 is when I really stepped into this profession the way that I do it now.
Wow. Very powerful. So to tell us a little bit more about who do you help? Who are ideal prospects and clients for you that are a good match with your gifts?
Well, I'll tell you, the way that I create my business, it's just based on service, and whether or not people are my clients or not. Basically, what I do in the world is I help people, just in my presence alone, come home to themselves as if for the very first time. Because in the story I told you, I was not home all of my life. From year 2000, I started to come home to myself, so that there's just this groundedness that I have no matter where I go, where I speak. In my presence, people, when they feel disjointed or not at home, they start to feel at home. Where this relates to my businesses, when it comes to people in business, creative people, my clients run from all industries, male and female, various ages. It really stems from this point where they are disjointed from themselves and not feeling at home. And we create that within them. That's where it starts. And that glimmer of hope of, man, I feel disjointed. Like you're saying, they've built this business and they don't know how to live life. We bring them home within their current situation. We get them to stop living in an outdated concept of themselves to really become at home with their current situation. That's what I did with the vice president of Banana Republic. He thought, oh my gosh, my English skills are horrible. I can't do this. And man, his idea of where he was and where he really was night and day. And then from that, he gained confidence in his speaking in English. He started transforming his company and the relationship between his division in Japan and the world. He started having a voice because he gained confidence. We just brought him to a current realistic concept, not his make-believe concept of himself.
Very
so
powerful.
That's with people.
Yeah. So what's the biggest problem with the people that you're trying to help to get them to where they want to be? What's the obstacle? What's holding us back?
I'd say in general, not just the people I work with, but everybody has this idea about themselves that isn't true. We all have internal struggles that we have where we believe something about ourselves that are not true. And these things are an impediment to creation. So what I call it is the judgment that we have about ourselves, not good enough, not capable enough, not attractive enough, has us stop dead in our tracks. That's what stopped me in my business. I had all these fears that were not true. That's the biggest thing. And when I allow them to offer forgiveness pays the debt of judgment. That's the biggest thing that I see, is once we allow ourselves to be as we are, we're freedom. I'll tell you a quick story. My son is 6. Somewhere, he's just started kindergarten. He has this idea that because I misbehave, I'm bad. Last week, he told me for the first time, I am bad. And I'm like, where did this come from? I don't teach it. My wife doesn't. And I said, well, what about this? You're studying math. We do math together. 2 and 2 is 3. And he goes, no, it's not. I said, how do you know? So he puts 2 fingers and then 1. He goes, 1, 2, 3. I said, okay, well, how about this? What if misbehaving doesn't equal bad? What if it just means misbehaving? Bingo, he's got this idea. I'm not bad. No, actually, you're good. Your goodness. We can't fix bad or good. Like, if a bad apple is bad, but you're not a bad apple. You are good. And sometimes you misbehave. That's normal for a little boy. We'll work on what's acceptable, not acceptable, but I will teach you. But we're training him in 1 week that I'm goodness. The difference that's happening when I need to discipline him, he's like, oh, I'm not bad, I'm good, and I can make a better choice. So that's like a small example, but we do that with CEOs. I do that with business people. They think that their past choices have made them this or that, and they feel trapped within that. I felt trapped within my life. So my time of work internally has allowed me to help people to see past that. That's the biggest thing. Yeah. Once people forgive themselves, the debt is paid and they are set free. And from there, creation is possible.
What a powerful example, and how simple there with your own son. And yet the same principle applies to us, adults and powerful people in powerful places, but we're still like the child on the inside who, beating ourselves up and not able to forgive ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. What can someone begin to do? I always like to ask for like a self-help process. And I know that it actually requires, it is a process. It's not something that we can just suddenly start changing the way we see ourselves. But is there a self-help technique that we can begin moving in the right direction to get past this and begin to see enough improvement that it gives us confidence to keep going?
There's something, I'm working with a coach down in Phoenix, and he is called the Ultimate Coach. He's a fellow named Steve Hardison. So if you Google the Ultimate Coach, you will find him. One of the first things that I learned working with him is that the world doesn't give us what we want. The world gives us who we are being. And what I mean by that, a lot of people want a lot of things, but in their behavior, in their actions, they are not receiving. They're receiving who they're being. So if I want to receive love from my wife, what I need to be is more loving towards my wife. When I declared I want that, I want peace, guess what? I started being more peaceful in interaction. So there came a moment where I could get angry at an employee, or I started to have some time to see, oh, my reactivity doesn't have to mean I immediately get mad. I can create space between my response, and in that space, I can be differently. People started noticing that I was different. Salespeople would come in, and before I would just chase them out, but I would actually have time for them, and they would start telling me their problems. This is while I still was running my business. But as I was gaining peace, I was able to be peaceful for people. So the world doesn't give you what you want. You might want a lot of things, but unless you start being that which you want, that's what's really been sticking. And what I can just see is in my being, my kids relate to me differently even than they did about a year ago when I started with my coach. My wife, it was her birthday 2 weeks ago, and I'm taking some pictures, and people are like, wow, she was always beautiful, but she's stunning. So I talked to my coach about that, and he goes, yeah, you're creating that. In how you treat her and how you're being, she is showing up differently, and she's more and more dazzling. I declare every day that I will fall in love with her every day. And in my being, I treat her in such a way that she's my queen, I'm her king. I create that.
Very powerful. And that reminds me of something Gandhi said, to be the change that we seek in the world.
Exactly.
The way you describe it is also very interesting, because we can come up with a list of things that we want. And then, the real enlightened path that you're talking about is, okay, all these things that you want, start being that to everybody else. And that's some ancient wisdom there, isn't it?
Oh, man, it's ancient and it's present in each moment. Everything that's created physically in the world has been created spiritually first. So what I mean by that is, when I desire something, this internal blueprint that I'm creating and I speak, that's what creates reality. And a lot of people just go out and do without changing where they're being, and they just create discord all over. And I'm about, we're going to work on who you're being. And in that moment, we are overcoming everything that has been in our path before. So this is every client. If you go to my website, GaryMahler.com, my most recent clients all say the same thing. I went looking for something, but something else shifted. And then suddenly I'm not only getting what I wanted, but I'm getting my whole life back. I have no interest in trying to get someone from A to B. You can hire an Uber to do that. I'm interested in changing who you're being, so that how you show up every day is going to be a factor of your relationship with your significant other, your children, the whole world. And then this world gets better. That's what I'm in for. Yeah. That's it.
Very powerful. And that's all about the transformation from the inside out.
That's it. Bingo.
Yeah. Very, very powerful. Gary, what are you working on right now that's got you really excited that you'd like to share with our listeners?
So the biggest thing, the first thing is just my two kids. I'm an old guy, relatively. I'm 53. But most kids at 53 are getting ready at some point to be a grandparent. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So I'm just thrilled, in allowing them to learn from me. The one thing that I promised my wife when I married her is that you will not have a conventional life. So we travel a lot, and I live in Vancouver, Canada, which is a beautiful, beautiful city, but in the winters it's very cold. So I've got this idea, and I am creating the Mahler International Coaching Studio, and it will be in somewhere that is tropical. It's really feeling like Hawaii, because that's the place that I go to the most. That's the biggest project that I'm creating. That's what the work that I'm doing with my coach. It's something big in the world. And what that place is, and I currently do this without the Mahler Coaching Studio, I begin my year-long clients with me for 2, 3, or 4 days. We spend 4 days together to start to fashion our relationship. And from there, I call it the Become Alive sessions. And in a year, we transform who they are, who they're being in their relationships, in their business, in their leadership style. And at the end of the year, their whole organization has shifted. Their whole marriage and family situation has shifted. And what I'm marrying is those two concepts, so that at the Mahler International Coach Studio, when you work with me in this fashion, it's kicked off that you come and you stay nearby, and we work together in this beautiful place. That's the rest of my life. That's where I see my kids growing up in the winters to enjoy the tropical surf and do the things together that I love to do. It's like my biggest dream.
Well, I tell you that paints a very powerful picture and a very compelling vision that you're putting out there. I could definitely see myself in that environment doing those very things, and I think that a lot of people will resonate with what you have shared with them today, especially those of our listeners, those of you who are trying to build a business, create a business, and you are actually creating a job for yourself, a golden cage, as it were, so that even if you are successful, you're not successful in the things that really matter. And better to find that out now than to find that out many years down the road. Gary, how can our listeners get in touch with you and find out more?
They could go to my website, GaryMahler.com. They could reach me at restart@GaryMahler.com. On Facebook, Gary L. Mahler. Friend me on Facebook, and Messenger is really wonderful. It's a great way for me to connect with people as I travel around the world. So, for instance, I'll be in Japan in a couple of weeks. I'll be there for 3 weeks. I've got clients flying out to spend some time with me in Japan since I know it very well. It's a fantastic way that any one of those ways they can connect with me. And I love just listening to stories and connecting and just seeing what's possible.
Excellent. So we'll have that link on the website as well. It's GaryMahler.com. That's MAHLER, GaryMahler.com. Gary, this has been a real pleasure to learn about you and to learn about your work. Very motivational. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us as we wrap things up today?
That's a great question. I'll just put this out. The mind is like a GPS system. Whatever address you put in your mind goes there. Whatever your address you put in your thinking, your mind will go there. The mind is like a GPS system. My GPS is love unconditionally of myself, of my family, and the world. That's it. So what happens is, what you give is what you get. That's pretty much my life. So that's the last little thing that I'd share.
Excellent. Words of wisdom from Gary Mahler. He is a Zen beach boy, he says, master of flow, speaker of truth, known for pure spirit connection, choosing only the best waves, strength in silence, and commitment to vision and purpose. You can connect with Gary, find out more about what he's got going on at GaryMahler.com. Gary, it's been a real pleasure to get to know you on the show. Thanks so much for being on Rebelpreneur Radio today. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. I was looking forward to it. Beautiful work you're doing. What a great time to be spending with you today. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogdon. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.